Hello, I'm Dan Ware. For this week's Frankly Franklin, we have invited back one of last year's most popular guests. Ronald Dunn was on talking with Henry, and we determined then that Ronald and his brother had operated the same business in the same location continuously for about the longest time of anybody in Franklin. But Ronald happens to have a son who's the same age that I am. So I want today, with Ronald's help, to turn the clock back a little bit, and we're going to talk about Franklin 50 plus years ago, before the days of Interstate 65, no super Walmarts. 31W was the Dixie Highway. It was the way you went if you were going to Florida, and you had to stop at every traffic light between here and there in order to get there. And for a lot of you watching, it was a different world that you didn't experience firsthand. But we're going to talk about it a little bit. I hope you enjoyed it if you didn't know it. And if you're as old as I am or older, then it's going to be a stroll down memory lane. What about it, Ronald? Are you up for it?
That's fine.
Okay.
I wish I could turn it back to that.
Yeah, you know, this is the point where the music goes do-do-do-do-do-do-do, you know, and the tape weaves, but it won't turn the clock back.
No, it won't.
Yeah, yeah. But it's good to reminisce, I think. All right. Okay, well, let me start with this. Does the name Hill Service Company mean anything to you?
Very much so.
All right, why don't you tell me about that?
Well, my brother worked there until he retired, and my first employment was on Sunday at Hill Service Company.
Let's tell people where that was located, because the Y, there's a world of cars still go by it every day.
Well, it was the Y. That's what it was. It was originally, it was the Y. And
but it's the point north of town where Main Street and College Street
go together.
And the building is still standing.
And at that time, at that particular time, they had the headquarters of the major trucking company in this area, and they had bunks and things for them to sleep down there.
Is that right?
Yeah.
I didn't realize that.
Well,
yeah,
I'm going to tell you a lot of things.
Okay, probably so.
But anyway, they had places for them to sleep, and I'm trying to think of the transport company now. I would know it if somebody asked me, but I can't think. But anyway, Hill Service. It was also the very first place, because of my brother was there, that did recapping. And they did extensive tire work. Of course, not because he was my brother, but he was the best tire man that ever was on earth. And my kids grew up, Rodney and Beth. If Uncle Harold said something, that was it. That was gospel.
If Harold says it so.
Uncle Harold, of course, Uncle Harold didn't have any kids of his own. So my kids and Bill's kids, they became his kids.
Well, Hill's had probably the lion's share of the local trade.
Oh, yeah.
And then people from Michigan or wherever
would be
pulling off, right?
They were owned by a company out of town.
Out of Glasgow, wasn't
Yes,
it?
that's right.
That's right.
He later tried to buy into some of these new ones, but he didn't make it. But even until Harold's wife died, they kept up her insurance and stuff like that. Mr. Mitchell was his name.
Right.
And he was just a marvelous man.
He started a foundation.
That's right.
Mitchell
well,
Foundation.
he just loved folks, and he didn't see a stranger. And Hills was the place.
Yeah, in those days you could buy gas on credit, couldn't you?
That's right. That's right.
You just tell them put it on your account.
The greatest thing to me when I started working there was they had a colored man named Ab Wickware.
Abner Wickware, I remember.
But he was just fabulous to me. And he was so nice to everybody. He'd just meet the public, you know, meet the, and then, yes, sir, what could I do for you, you know? And they had a cheap oil then called Evening Star Oil.
Okay.
And it was just a barrel of old crude oil is what it was. And they'd sell that, I think it was a dime or 15 cents.
Right.
And Ab would say, yes, sir, yes, we have Evening Star Oil. Said, what weight do you want? Well, I couldn't see that because everything was out of the
same barrel.
So as soon as the customer got gone, I said, Ab, how in the world did you sell all the weights of oil out of that one barrel? He said, it all depends on how fast you crank it. so I learned a lot at Hills.
I guess you did. I guess you did. Well, now, besides Harold and Abner Wickware, who was that other fella that was down there for so
Harvey
long?
Hall.
Harvey Hall, that's him, yeah.
And, of course, Harvey was really the manager for when they first started
Yeah.
it.
And people would gather in there and loaf some, wouldn't they?
He was what?
People would gather in there and kind of loaf a little bit
yeah,
there
if you
sit
didn't
there
have
and
any,
watch the traffic come
if you
down.
didn't have any place to go, that was a place to loaf at Hills.
Yeah.
Harvey was real nice to people too. And then they had these express drivers that had living quarters there. They slept there, and of course they never closed.
It was like Massey.
Yes.
Right.
And you come through, if you couldn't find anywhere else, you'd show up at Hills. If they couldn't take care of you, you couldn't be taken care of, but they'd find some way to do it.
Yeah.
And of course, as I say, Harold left. He was there until they finally closed out. But
Well, now there was a restaurant right across the street, right?
yeah,
Was that called the Townhouse in those days?
No,
or
no.
Did it have another
no,
name?
it was
or?
the Y Cafe.
The Y Cafe. Oh, okay. All right.
It had a lot of names along the years, but the Y Cafe was the main thing that I can remember. But it was a great place to eat.
Okay.
Of course, they were open practically all night, every day too. They never closed.
So they got a lot of these people going up and down the road stopping
Well, of
there to eat
of
too.
course, 31W then. If you was going anywhere, you was on 31W. If you wasn't on 31W, you wasn't going anywhere.
That's right. That's right.
So it was quite a hub
Uh-huh.
at the Y. And then along came Mr. Foster, and he decided to build Simpson County High School up on the hill there close. Of course, everybody in the county thought he was an idiot, but he was sharper than the people gave him credit for.
How so?
Simpson County High School got built, and there wasn't any back talk. It became the high school.
When they consolidated.
For 4
right.
years. For 4 years.
Right.
And then there wasn't any more then.
Mm-hmm.
And it broke my heart when they sold it.
Yeah.
I wanted it kept like it was.
Pretty campus sitting back up on top of the hill there. Yeah. Yeah. Made it nice.
And he did Mr. Foster did a tremendous job. It was the best built high school in this section of the country when he built it, had it built. And as I say, the country people who came in, of course, felt like that they were stepchildren, and because if you didn't go to Franklin High School, you weren't with it. But when he got that built, he got the respect that he deserved.
And I think, like you said, within 4 years they had consolidated the city
Well,
and the county.
the reason we had to consolidate is that the ball teams got so vicious, we had to stop them from playing each other.
Oh, really?
Oh, my goodness, it was a free-for-all.
A terrible rivalry.
Oh.
Yeah. So then we substituted Bowling Green as our big rival.
That's right. That's right. But when Simpson County High got on its feet, you see, I went to Franklin High School for 2 years.
Right.
And I went for Simpson County High School for 2 years. So I was the better of both worlds. I knew what was going on.
Well, now where was the Franklin High School?
It was right up here where it is now.
Okay.
That's where I started the school in the 9th grade.
But at one time, wasn't the high school where Franklin Elementary is way back when?
No.
No?
I don't remember that.
I thought they had older kids there at one time.
No.
Wasn't there a school there before the building that's there now, another school building?
Yeah, but it was a great school.
Was it a great school?
Yeah.
Because I think that Carl Bryant shot some movie footage of kids in that school way back before Franklin
could
Elementary
have, but
was
I
built.
don't remember. But I started the school up on the hill.
Right.
In the 9th grade to Miss Mamie Randolph.
Okay.
Was my first year sponsor.
Okay.
And I went to 9th and 10th grade in Franklin High School. So I had colleagues in both bunches. And
Why did you change schools?
Well, I lived right out the top of the hill out here at the bridge.
Okay.
And I was supposed to go there all the time, but in the early time, before Mr. Foster got this thing built, I rode to town on a bicycle.
To go to the city school.
To go to city school. And then after that was built, by then I had to pay somebody extra if I wasn't in that school.
Oh, I see. So you had to go in.
So I became a victim of circumstance.
Well, there you go. All right. Well, I don't think you suffered. I bet you got an all right
No,
education.
no. It was the best of both worlds.
Yeah.
I was sure glad because I got some fine old classmates that I started with at Franklin High School.
Right.
And this is a strange thing. This is beside the point, but the ones who graduated from Franklin High School have never had a reunion.
Oh, really? I hadn't thought about that. I haven't seen that in the paper.
The only, and of course, we just got through having a 4-class deal.
Yeah.
Of the 4 classes that graduated from Simpson County High School.
Never thought about that.
Well,
yeah.
I thought about it because I've been trying to get. Of course, we invited a few of those people that went to that.
Right.
To our, some of ours, and they went.
Yeah.
But they have never had a class reunion. None of the Franklin kids. They don't know what a class reunion is.
Well, I'll be. Well, let's go back to the Y. We talked about Hills and the Y Cafe. I want to go north a little bit.
Okay.
All right. For those, everybody knows where we were talking about when the Y. I'm going to go north now, past where the post office is now, and there's a Minute Mart on the corner. I want you to talk a little bit to me about Hughes Market and about the Homestead Restaurant.
Well, Hughes's Market was really a newer establishment.
Not as old as what we're talking
about. No, it never was.
But it goes back at least to the 60s. I used to go in there and read comic books without paying for
it. The next thing down the line from Hills would be Ramey Poxer's.
Now you got me there. I don't know what. I don't know.
Okay. Well, that was the Bloody Bucket.
Oh, really? Oh, that sounds interesting.
That was the dive-in place that
the Bloody Bucket.
That well, that's my name for it.
Oh, okay.
Anyway, it was a wide open place.
Yeah.
Where they gambled and danced and that type of thing. And of course, I didn't go to that, and it was before my time. But it was quite the establishment. And
well, I guess you can remember when they sold whiskey legally in Franklin.
Oh, yes,
you?
yes.
That was up to World War II. Right?
I told that on the other tape some. I've been through this thing, and my father had a market down next to where they stole whiskey. And there'd be so many people to come in on Saturday night to load up whiskey.
Yeah.
For the bootleggers and everything, you couldn't believe it. And everybody keeps telling me, well, if we just had legal whiskey, it would, and that's not true. We had legal whiskey. I lived through all of it, and it didn't help at all. But anyway.
There was still, as you were saying, there's still as much bootlegging.
It was 2 doors down from where the Liberty Theater was. Now, that's before your time, too.
I was at the Liberty Theater.
Okay, well.
I saw Samson and Delilah in the Liberty Theater.
Okay. Well,
talk to me about the Liberty Theater. I've been there.
Okay.
All right.
Well, I'm glad to know that you have, because I spent many a day in the Liberty Theater.
Yeah, it cost about a dime, as I recall.
That's right.
Yeah.
You could go to.
Well, which was better, the Liberty or the Roxy?
Well, the Roxy was more modern, so of course the Liberty was locally owned and locally run, and it sold second movies. They weren't any high class ones. But it was all we had for a while. Of course, the original of that was run by Mr. Nig Harris, who was the baker here.
Okay.
And it was the movie theater at that time was up on next to the Methodist Church.
Okay. Now, I never knew about that one.
Well, you see, that's way before your time.
That's a little before my time.
Okay, and I was trying to think what they called the thing. It wasn't Liberty then, but anyway, of course, the Liberty was owned by the 2 brothers, and the main brother lived in I believe it was Cincinnati, and then his brother lived here, was Mr. Jones, and he booked all these movies. He'd go to a meeting, and of course he had to watch his nickels and dimes because he didn't make the. Now, Roscoe Freeland originally worked for that theater, and of course he was later the manager of the Roxy when it moved in here, and
And didn't they put in some kind of primitive type air conditioning in the Roxy?
Well, it wasn't primitive. It was up to date at that time.
For that time.
It
but
was
compared to today.
It was water washed.
Okay.
What it was ice water over.
Okay.
And of course,
but it worked pretty good, right?
Of course, the Roxy had that too.
Okay. All right.
When it was built, it didn't have regular air.
But a lot of places in town didn't.
And the reason I know about that, of course, Bill Dunn worked at that.
Oh, did he?
Yeah. That was his first job before he got into service.
Oh, really? Was he like a usher or a projectionist, or what did he do?
He was a ticket taker.
Ticket taker.
I got in free.
It pays to know the right people, doesn't it? Yeah.
But, yeah, see, he worked there, and then he worked at Sugar and Hunt. Sugar and Hunt, that was the original name. I was trying to think of it.
Right.
It was later
Sugar and Willis.
Sugar and Willis. Of course, that was a much modern time. But that's where he was working. And Nanny Lou, his wife, worked there too.
Uh-huh.
And so we were all intertwined. Of course, there was a time in Simpson County, anybody you could bring up was kin to somebody, just about. And of course, if Bill Dunn didn't know him and I didn't know him, they weren't known.
That's probably right.
And of course, Bill knew every house in the county, and he also knew how to get into every house in the county. People used to wonder, say, how'd you get into my house? It was locked.
Well, trade secret, I guess.
But
well, you're talking about Sugar and Hunt drugstore. Of course, they had a big soda fountain, right?
Yes, yes.
And the Moores had a soda fountain.
Yes, and Arnold's.
Arnold's had.
Yes.
So you had 3 drugstores with soda fountains.
3 great.
So what would you do? You'd go to the movie, and then would you go afterwards and get a milkshake, or what would you do?
Well, no, you'd go to A&P store. It was on the corner.
Yeah.
Over on where the old plant board used to be. And for a dime, you could buy a sack of red skin peanuts.
Yeah.
And I mean, the sack was like this. It must have been 2 or 3 gallons.
Oh, gracious.
Because you could eat it. You could eat it through a double feature movie.
And did not hit okay.
And not even scratch the surface. You could take it home and you'd be still eating peanuts.
So you got that instead of popcorn?
Yeah.
Ah, okay.
Of course, you could buy some kind of frozen confection. Of course, the little store right next to the Liberty Theater was a little grocery store. And you could get a deal of sherbet that was almost like a big can of sherbet is now for a nickel.
Really? Yeah.
So you could, of course, things are a lot different.
Okay. So you stopped at the store and bought what you was going to eat and took that into the movie.
That's
and
right.
They let you take it in.
Of course, they had popcorn too, but
but
that wasn't the best buy.
Well, did you watch all kinds of movies? They show a lot of westerns.
Oh yeah, of course, western was my cup of tea. At that time, I had pictures of all the stars, and I corresponded with a lot of them.
Oh, really?
I've still got a bunch of those pictures. Of course, Gene Autry was my favorite.
Yeah.
And of course, my nickname, you never heard. There's only one person that still uses it, but Tom Lewis, the preacher. You know Tom?
I knew a Tom Lewis that was a barber.
Well, no, this is Tom Lewis, who was pastor out at Lake Spring, out at Mitchellville.
I don't reckon I knew him.
Well, whenever he gets in the pulpit, he says, well, I see Hootie's here.
Hootie.
That's me.
Is it like after Hoot Gibson?
After Hoot Gibson, that's right.
Yeah.
Well, and why he hung on to that, I'll never know. Of course, we were in class together. He sat right behind me in Round Pond. And I think he'd have still been in school if it hadn't been for me.
Would he look on your paper?
Well,
for his answers?
He was dumb. He was dumb as a post, but he made the finest minister you ever seen.
Well, all right.
You can't tell who's going to be a minister.
No, you can't tell.
But anyway, Tom has been real close to me, and of course, we were kin to him, really, kin to his family. And but anyway, he still calls me Hootie.
Hootie Dunn. I'll have to remember that.
And that's where it came from, Hoot Gibson.
Yeah. Oh yeah, Hoot Gibson, Tom Mix, you know.
Tom Mix, all those are old friends of mine.
Yeah.
But of course, as I say, Gene Autry was the crowning glory of all of it. He was fabulous, I thought. Of course,
Can you sing like Gene?
No.
Can you sing Back in the Saddle again?
I can. I could be. But anyway, I liked his outlay that he had, the way he acted, and this type of thing, and he was just a fine man.
Mm-hmm. We talked about the soda fountains in Moore's and Sugar and
Yeah,
Hunt and Arnold's, but what about the sweet shop? You remember the sweet shop?
Yes, I do.
Tell me about the sweet
Very
shop.
much so. That was the Page brothers.
Yeah.
They came to Franklin and opened the sweet shop.
When Leon was in there scooping ice cream, did you figure him for a bank president?
No, I didn't. But he had the best ice cream there was in town.
Is that right?
He went to Glasgow, went home to Glasgow, and he came back here and opened a sweet shop with his brother.
Right.
I think his brother's dead now.
I'm not sure.
But I believe he was sick for a long time. But anyway.
You know, I tell you what, I had Leon on this program once, and I was asking him about that, and he could remember to this day exactly what he paid for that ice cream, exactly what he sold it for, and what his profit was on every scoop of that ice cream. And knew it cold 50 years later.
And he made money, too.
I bet he did, yeah.
But they didn't skim on nothing. Everything was first class.
Got the good stuff, yeah.
And that's what made it fine.
Well, now, he was in the corner that is at the corner, I guess it'd be the southeast corner of Maine and Kentucky.
Right.
And now, wasn't there another restaurant?
Across the street.
M&K Cafe?
Yeah,
Is that about the same time or
yes,
sooner or later?
On the M&K, the superintendent of schools that came in, I forget his name now, but he ran that for a while.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My wife was here, she could tell you what his name. Anyway, but Leon was very high on my list. And when Tommy Hughes would come back to town after he left, he would want to go eat breakfast at 5 o'clock in the afternoon. And he'd want me to go over to the sweet shop with it.
Yeah.
And I'd go over, and he'd eat bacon and eggs. That's what he wanted.
Well, we were talking before we started taping about a mutual friend of ours, George Skaggs, who's no longer with us. And George liked to eat breakfast in the afternoon.
Yeah.
And
he was the same way.
Yeah. George was making pictures at Franklin and Russellville and different schools.
Yeah.
And I worked with him some. And about 3:30, George would want to go to the homestead, and he would order scrambled eggs and bacon.
Scrambled eggs and bacon.
At 3:30,
I reckon
that
I guess that went with the photography, didn't it?
I don't know. Must have, yeah.
But anyway, I know both of those photographers were that way.
Yeah. Well, now, what about the Kentucky Grill? Did you ever eat there? Wasn't that up the street from where your business was?
Kentucky Grill was a later thing, really.
Well, it couldn't have been too much later, Ronald, because I remember going in there pretty young. It must have been at least there by 1960, wasn't it? I don't know when they started.
I
but
can't remember that.
Going
Yeah,
in there.
but I've eaten at the Kentucky Grill a long time. At that time, it was run by man and his wife. And every time I'd be late coming in from Nashville with a load of stuff, she'd come out and see me, and she'd say, "Ronald, you haven't had supper yet, have you?" And I said, "No, I haven't." She says, "You come on in, and I'll fix you some supper."
All right.
And she'd fix me supper many times.
Huh.
Mr. and Ms. Brown.
Okay.
I knew I'd come to me.
Yeah.
But they were fabulous people.
Yeah. Everybody kind of looked out for one another back
Yeah,
then.
well, everybody, because I'd come in late. It'd be 7, 8 o'clock.
Yeah, and you hadn't eaten.
Normally they'd be closed and gone.
Right, but
She saw me, and she'd come, and she says, I'd be unloading or something.
Yeah, right.
She'd say, "Ronald, you haven't had any supper, have you?" I said, "No, but I'll make." She says, "You come on in the restaurant. I'll fix you something if I don't have something you want."
Huh.
And she's fixed me many a meal.
And she'd stay open till you got done
Yes,
eating.
sir. Yes, sirree.
Yeah.
And she didn't have something, she'd fix it for me.
Yeah. Okay, well, now we're at where we're talking about. We're at Maine and Kentucky.
Right.
All right, I want to go north just a little bit.
Okay.
Were you ever in Clarence Turner's barbershop?
Yeah. Some.
Right.
My first haircut in Franklin was in the shop up the street from Dunn Brothers.
Mm-hmm.
It was Bill, my brother, took me there to get a haircut.
Mm-hmm.
I'd already had the home type, bowl on your top.
Yeah, trim around it. Yeah, yeah.
The first city deal I ever had,
Uh-huh.
I got a haircut.
Were you
Bill,
just a little fella, or were you?
yeah, and Bill
Yeah.
took me.
Yeah.
Of course, there was 6 years difference in our age.
Oh, okay.
And
I didn't know how much it was.
6 years.
And then where did Harold fit in there?
Harold was 2 years older.
Okay.
No, I'll take that back. Bob was the next one, 2 years older.
Okay.
And then Harold.
Okay.
In the boy line, then I had 2 sisters intermingled.
I see.
But the first city haircut I ever had was Law's Barbershop.
Law's Barbershop.
And it was where the old post office used to be. The post office used to be on our side too, you know.
No, the first post office I remember was on Main Street.
The post office is where the favorite started.
Yeah. Now, I knew the favorite started there on the north side of the square.
Well, that was the post office.
And where they moved, that building was originally a carriage house, wasn't it, that they moved the favorite into? I think it was.
You mean the one over on
Where they are now on High Street, yeah. Where the paper and the radio station is.
Well, Mr. Edgar Johnson, my wife's uncle, was the daddy of all that deal.
Uh-huh.
And there was 2 or 3 buildings there that he amalgamated and got together, and I think that's when the favorite moved in.
Well, the reason I say that, Stan Portman, you remember Stan?
Yeah.
When I was working down there, the windows that are in above where Stan's desk used to be for so many years, the way they were put in, I think he told me that was a carriage house or something.
Well,
it had been something.
Yeah.
But you know, when
Well, Mr. Edgar Johnson remodeled all
okay,
that.
when they remodeled it and put WFKN in there, I mean, that looked like a real radio station,
right,
you know, the way
right,
they laid that
right,
out.
right.
And
Yeah.
a lot of the other places around here would be in a little hole in the wall, and it looked like an uptown radio station.
I'm trying to remember exactly some of that. There were some real nice buildings back there. The lot on which was close to that had some kind of home on it, and it was fine built too.
Uh-huh.
But anyway,
Well, I asked you about Clarence Turner's barbershop.
Yeah.
Now, I think that's where I got my first
is that
haircut.
right?
Yeah.
Well, of course, Clarence was a good
Clarence
barber.
was in there, and I think there was a fellow named Brown
That's right.
in there in the first chair.
Right.
But if I'm remembering right, they had mirrors on both sides of the
Yes.
walls facing
Yeah.
each other, and you could, you know, look
Right.
back and forth and got an endless reflection in that mirror.
Uh,
Had little signs underneath the mirror.
Clarence
Had
was
big hornets' nests hung up on the wall.
Clarence was one of our characters
Mm-hmm.
in the deal of Franklin. He was a excellent barber when he wanted to be, and then he was a sloppy one when he didn't want to be.
But now they tore down the building that he was in,
Yes,
right?
yeah, it's gone.
And it was next to where Brian's studio
Right,
was, right?
right.
And that was a bank at one time, as I
That's right.
understand.
McElwain and McGuire Bank.
Still got the big vault in there. I
Yeah,
think.
yeah.
Yeah. And then the Massey Motor Company was on the corner.
Right.
Okay. And like you said, they never closed.
And that wasn't Massey Motor Company at that time.
Winfield.
Winfield and Massey.
Right.
Of course, it was Winfield Brothers to start with,
Uh-huh.
and then it was Winfield and Massey,
Okay.
and then it was Massey Brothers.
All right.
that
Who,
was-
who bought in first, Paul or Silas?
Sykes,
Okay. Okay.
and Sykes brought Paul in
Yeah.
with him. Sykes was the brains.
Okay.
Paul was the working end of it.
Okay. And Paul now was the politician of the two,
Yes,
right?
he was.
Because he was mayor, what, a couple of times?
Yes, 2 or 3 times, I think.
Yeah, and during when a lot of the first factories came in.
That's right.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and I think I remember that they did close for 1 hour one time for somebody's funeral.
Yeah,
But
for a
that was the
funeral.
only time
But they were
closed.
open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Yep.
They
Yeah.
weren't, Massey Motor Company was never closed until recent years.
Yeah.
Of course,
yeah.
when some of the youngsters got into it, and
Right, and they moved over
Yeah,
on to
mhm.
Washington. Yeah.
of course there were two businesses, the Buick garage
Mm-hmm.
and the Dodge garage.
Okay.
Of course, Massey was the first Dodge dealer that ever was. in the state of Kentucky.
Oh, really?
That's right.
Huh.
And the next one was Cumberland Dodge in Nashville.
Yeah.
But the oldest was Massey
Was
Motor
Massey.
Company.
Is that right?
And, of course, at that time, you couldn't put Dodge and Buick together.
Mm-hmm.
So they kept the Buick garage open, and then the Massey main deal that was open 24 hours a day was the Dodge end of it.
But they were side by side.
No, they were across the street.
Across the street. Well, now I thought.
See, the old Buick garage is over where that that place that's antique place.
Where the antique mall.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Didn't Jim Grow own that for a while?
No, that's across the street. Across the street. That's Oldsmobile.
Massey's moved over there.
That's the Oldsmobile place.
Right, but didn't Massey's move over to that other place?
Yeah,
Kinda.
sort of temporarily, I think.
Yeah.
But the Buick garage was the wheel end of
Okay.
it.
Well, now, right across Main Street from where Massey's,
Okay.
didn't there used to be a church?
Yes,
that
they
stood
did.
There?
Catholic
Okay.
Church.
Okay, that was a Catholic church.
Yes.
Okay,
That's what it was to start with. Of course, there
All
were
right.
several other things. And
but it got deconsecrated, right? And they ran a business out of, or built something in the front
yeah,
of it.
well, Tarpley Wholesale.
Yeah,
Mr.
there you go.
Tarpley ran a
There you
wholesale
go.
out of it.
Okay.
But that was one of the finest old buildings that's ever been built. It had some beautiful stuff in it.
Mm-hmm.
And they messed it up and let it fall and tore most of
Wound
it
up
up.
tearing it down. Yeah.
But yeah, that was a church.
Well, let's talk about something
And
else.
right beside front of that was one of the most important, the mortuary company, the Jordan Company.
I don't know that one. That's before my time.
Well, that's where all your monuments were made.
Okay.
That's some of Tater Jordan's folks.
I've heard that name, yeah.
And it was right next to the Catholic
Mm-hmm.
church.
Well, speaking of mortuaries, it looks like now that the House and Bryan mortuary building on Cedar Street's maybe going to come down because they're going to put the Boys and Girls Club there. And
I thought they were going to put it down here where the...
Well, the last thing that came out, they said it was going to cost so much to remodel it, they were thinking they might just tear it down and put up another one.
Who owns that now?
I think that they've set up some sort of foundation or something to run the Boys and Girls. But I want to talk about another building that got torn down that we probably should have preserved. I want you to talk a little bit about the depot. And understand we had a freight depot and a passenger depot up by the railroad once upon a time.
That's right.
I can barely remember that.
Is that right?
Yeah, but now tell me about, I guess back in the day there was lots of people catching the train right?
It was the most busy place in town.
Uh-huh.
Everybody was going anywhere, went by train.
Caught the train, yeah.
And you could, if you wanted to go somewhere, if you wanted to go to Portland, you got on the train because they'd stop for you.
Yeah. Any idea what it would cost to ride to Portland on the train?
I've forgotten. I knew at the time.
Probably wasn't much.
Oh, no.
Yeah. It stopped in Mitchellville too, didn't it?
Yes.
I thought it stopped in
sirree.
Mitchellville, yeah.
Of course, the old freight depot was down the block
Uh-huh.
where not quite to the the new building.
The jail.
Jail.
Yeah.
But anyway, and it broke my heart when they tore down the depot.
Oh, yeah.
Because I found out later that L&N would have given that to Franklin if they'd have taken it over.
Really? Oh, man, I missed an opportunity.
Well,
didn't I?
Mr. Clark, who worked for them,
Yeah.
you know Mr. Clark.
Oh,
didn't
yeah,
you?
yeah.
And
James Clark, I
he,
sure do.
he told me that, and of course he's been instrumental in getting several things that Ronnie wanted, such as the original architect's deal of the depot.
Mm-hmm.
Ronnie's got the original drawing.
Oh, does he? I'd like to see that sometime.
And Mr. Clark got it for him.
Well, great, yeah.
And it was the only one available.
Huh.
And Henry Price got it and had it copied somewhere. He was going to build a model of it.
Yeah.
And of course Ronnie was going to build a model. I have a tinted picture that I tinted of the old depot.
Do you?
Yeah.
Well, I knew Henry Price Smith had done
Well,
in his stuff, but I don't think I've ever seen yours.
but I did one from a photograph,
Yeah.
and I hand tinted it, and
wasn't there a boarding house right up in there close
right
to it?
across the street.
Yeah. So you'd rent a room and they'd feed you supper, right?
Well, it was a commercial hotel, what they called it,
Okay.
and they had a lot of guests there all the time.
Uh-huh.
And they had a tremendous meals there, just down-to-earth stuff.
Yeah.
A lot of towns then had a commercial hotel and a regular hotel. Of course, at that time, when that was going, the hotel uptown was going.
Well, now you're talking about where Sullivan's is.
Yeah, that was going
a
great
Franklin
guns.
Hotel.
Yeah,
right?
and it was fabulous.
What was it like to walk in the lobby when that hotel was there? Was it
Just like you'd walked into a Taj Mahal.
really? Is that?
Oh, it was beautiful, beautiful. They had a big dining room back there, and it was well kept.
Mm-hmm.
Well kept. Had the telegraph office in there.
Yeah. Didn't it have a little place you could buy cigars? in there?
Yes,
That's what I thought,
anything
yeah.
you wanted.
Yeah. The Franklin Hotel.
Boy, it was a marvelous thing.
Yeah.
My brother Robert was run the popcorn popper, and he got so heavy pouring butter on the popcorn. He like to never lost it.
Oh my.
And Taylor Jordan worked there in the telegraph part.
Well, going back to the railroad, I'm going to tell you something that I think it was Bill Gentry that told me this.
Okay.
And see if you can confirm this. And I think I've got it right. There was a fellow who lived here named Salmons who worked for the railroad, was a high official. And Franklin has got a railroad crossing at just about every city street, which is kind of unusual. But because this fellow lived in Franklin, he wanted every street to have it and a crossing, and he had enough influence.
Well, you
to
could
get
do
that
it then.
done.
Yeah, if you had the influence, you could get it
Because I
done.
remember back some years ago, the L&N wanted to close off some of those crossings and not let the traffic go, and I don't think that that didn't happen.
I was trying to think of, there was another man who was,
And I think his Salmons fellow lived up close to where the Baptist church is now, up there on Cedar Street, if I remember
well,
right.
the man that I knew he was conductor on the General when it came through here.
Yeah, talk about that a little bit,
And,
that Civil War train. That's a good
Well,
story.
that was the greatest thing. Of course, my family was very much involved with this. Of course, Ronnie's got the only diorama of it that's on display down in Georgia. And he's got a complete diorama of the stealing of the General with the Lacey Hotel and the people and everything about it. Then he's got the engine, the General now is in this.
Yeah.
And they've built a beautiful, my daughter was just down there last year, and they've built a government that's built a beautiful thing.
But now that was the actual locomotive that was here in Franklin.
Yes.
When you were talking
Yes,
about.
sir. Well,
the one
see,
that was stolen and the
yeah,
big chase
yeah,
and all that.
that was
yeah.
the one that this movie was made about on
Yeah, with Buster Keaton.
Disney.
Yeah, yeah. Well, no, before that.
No,
Buster
yeah,
Keaton.
but
Solid.
they had a later one.
Okay. Yeah.
But anyway, Ronnie's been over that track where that's left of it, every cross tie of it. He's walked the thing.
Yeah.
And of course, he had a lot of friends down there. And then he built this diorama, and he used to go down there at the birthday time of the General and take the tours through. And he had a thing that showed pictures and with the voice and everything that he made for it. Of course, he was in the television business, so he made that.
Right, could do that. Right.
And then he had these dioramas made. At that same time, he was commissioned by Tennessee state government to do a deal of the General. And he's got the only model of that's commissioned, and it's absolutely perfect.
Is it down? Yeah.
It's so perfect that when he made it, of course, he was such a professional, you know him real well too,
Yes.
that the guy that was supposedly knew what he was talking about didn't know what he was talking about.
Oh, well, sometimes that happens.
So he had, it looked like some dirt or something on the side of it. And what would happen when they filled the General up with water, when they stopped for water,
Right.
they'd run it over to be sure it was full.
Yeah.
And that'd run
That'd make the
down the side of it,
dirt
but
would,
that's
yeah,
right.
Yeah, and make it a track. Yeah.
And
yeah.
so Ronnie said, that's where they run the tank over. Well, that guy couldn't believe it was that accurate. And then he tried tried to get on him about something else, about that significant. And he said, "You don't know what people wore these days, do you?" Mm-hmm. And Ronnie had done his research real well.
Uh-huh.
And that model is something else.
Yeah. When did train travel start to tail off? You know, you were saying that was the way everybody went. But after the war, didn't most everybody start getting cars?
World War II.
Yeah.
When we could get gasoline again. Of course,
right.
the gasoline was rationed, you know.
Right.
And you just got by the best way you could: tires, gasoline. But as soon as World War II was over, well, then everything dropped off.
But of course, we was talking about how 31W was how you went to Florida in your car, and it wasn't the interstate. We didn't have the motels like we got now, but weren't there a lot of cabins? You remember Don's Campground?
My goodness,
Yeah, tell me a little bit about that.
The Wigwam Village.
Right, Cave City, and what was one over on 31E?
Yeah, see that, and they're still going, by the way.
Absolutely, yeah.
But there had to be places to stop. There wasn't any hotels in. Very few hotels.
Right. But if I'm remembering right, as you go on North Main, right there about where Ronnie Black's Auto Supply is, there were some cabins right there, tourist cabins.
Well,
remember that?
There was one down by the restaurant you were talking about.
Yeah, the Homestead.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There was also Homestead Court.
Yeah, across the road.
Across the road.
Right.
And Ralph Eldred and his wife ran that for a long time when we were in business. But
right.
before that, it was the place.
Uh-huh.
It was about the best place in Franklin to stop at that time. We had several homes, tourist homes. Of course, that was quite the fashion earlier.
Yeah.
We had one where houses and not across the road from the Catholic Church.
Yeah, the Piggly Wiggly.
Yeah, and that was a motor home, tourist home.
Yeah.
Then we had a big one up on Main Street, about where Bevel's place was. And I'm trying to think. There's 2 or 3 others. We had several homes that were tourist homes. They were very popular.
Well, speaking of using the name home, did you ever eat in a restaurant called the Trucker's Home in north of Franklin? You remember Trucker's Home?
Yeah, I remember it. I don't remember ever eating in it, but I know where it was.
Well, if I'm remembering this, I was real little, so I don't remember very well. There was Trucker's Home, and then there was a Fields Cafeteria.
Yeah.
And I think they were both on North Main.
Yes, they're on the left.
Yeah. They're on the same side of the road.
Fields was a real nice one. And Truckers was, it was sort of a...
kind of a greasy spoon type place.
Yeah, I don't want to use that. That's not the word.
All right, well, I don't want to put words in your mouth.
The word that I want is a lesser class.
Uh-oh. Okay. All right.
I mean, you want to go in there in your dirty pants and either get a sandwich.
They had flies on the fries.
It was good.
Yeah, okay.
It was good. But Fields was an uptown.
Yeah, that's the way I remember it, yeah.
Yeah, Mr. Fields was, I remember that family real well.
Well, let's.
And then you had one on up a little further here, restaurant, there where Tommy Hughes' grocery store was.
Right.
And that was a nice one. An older lady came in here and opened that thing up, and I'm trying to think of what her name was. She went to the Baptist church, and she had a deal of like on Sunday, all you can eat, and it was first class stuff.
I think I remember eating there.
Yeah, it was fabulous.
Yeah.
Everybody tried to get there on Sunday.
Well, let's talk about another place that a lot of these tourists that went down 31W would stop. Cornwall's Gift Shop, out by Salmon.
Yes.
You remember Cornwall's Gift Shop?
Yes, very well.
Had most everything there.
Yeah, he had a little everything.
Yeah.
He was the big wheel in the soapbox derby.
That's right, he was, wasn't he?
Yeah, he built a lot of those, and had a lot of these kids helped up on it. He was quite a character.
He was.
And he built some beautiful models.
He did.
Yeah.
You know, he had another hobby. he liked to take pictures of outhouses.
Oh, was that? No, I
Yeah.
didn't know that. You got me something.
No, what was his first name? I can't remember what Mr. Cornwell's first name
I
was.
know, but I know who you're
But
talking
anyway,
about.
when I was in the newspaper business, he came in one day, and he said, I want to show you some pictures that I've
Outhouses.
made. And he started putting these photographs out.
I can't believe
And
that.
he says, now this privy is in Georgia. And he all over the country.
I can't believe that.
Well, it's true. He sure has.
Well, I know it is.
But
he was quite a character.
But they had the chenille bedspreads, you
Yeah.
know, out
Oh,
there.
he had
and
the-
all
he
the
had the-
crockery and
All kind of plastic stuff. I mean, stuff like water jug, water things, and
right, the bedspreads.
yeah.
And all, yeah.
he had
See
quite a
Rock City
he,
stuff
he
and all
got
that.
quite
yeah.
he had quite a thing going there.
Yeah. That was a, as I recall,
Cornwell's gift shop.
big enterprise.
Cornwell's gift
Yeah,
shop,
Yeah.
the best in this section.
Yeah. Well, now, were you? You were in the service part of the time, right?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Were you in town when the Mule Day was a big thing?
Yes,
or were
sir.
you away in the service?
No, it just so happened that I was playing in the high school band then,
Oh, really?
and when Marjorie Weaver was here,
Yeah.
I was in high school.
Yeah.
Now Bill had gone to service,
Okay.
but I was still here, and we had
Would that have been about 1940, long in there?
yeah.
Okay. All right.
Anyway,
And she was a pretty big movie star, wasn't she?
yes, she was.
Yeah.
And
okay.
she created quite a havoc, and she was good looking. She was a nice looking lady, and she was real well thought of. But anyway, we made the local Mule Day here.
Yeah.
That was my first year in the Simpson County High School band.
Well, now, didn't some national radio hookup do a broadcast from here?
Yes.
Was
Well,
that
it was
CBS or
it was
who
through
was
it was through WHAS in Louisville. I think
Yeah.
was
Okay.
we were the pilot of it, but I think that's where it went from.
But that was carried nationwide. right?
Yes.
Yeah.
See, Marjorie Weaver was from Louisville, and she
Oh, okay.
and she was real well thought of. And
Well, now, was Mule Day the same as Court Day, or was that two separate
no,
things?
it's two separate times.
Okay.
We had the biggest Mule Day going for a while until
What's that place
one
in
down in Tennessee scooped
Columbia?
it. Columbia.
Yeah.
And we went down there my second year, and I remember that very well because before that time I had played an upright tuba that Mr. Ferris had, and it was beat up,
Yeah.
and the band had nicknamed it Old Bertha, or I had, and
Old
that
Bertha.
was the keepsake of the band, and but the next year, they had another tuba player, and she had a new tuba, but they bought me a brand new Con, pink gold, and I had thought I'd died and gone to heaven. But we went down there that day, and the awfulest windstorm come up, and of course I just weighed 114 pounds then.
So the wind picked you up?
I couldn't even hold the thing down.
Blowing you over?
I finally got it on the ground where it wouldn't catch any wind,
Yeah.
but it blowed me all over that Columbia place.
Well, now, did we have a bandstand on the square at that time?
Yes, we did.
Oh, okay.
And it was a beautiful bandstand, and it was over on the opposite side next to Moore's.
All right. I think I've seen a photograph of
Yes,
that.
ma'am.
Yeah.
And it
So
was
that's where y'all played?
that was where we played.
Okay.
And not only that, but during the summer, Mr. Ferris was here. We had a community band.
That's right. I mean,
Mr. Bradley and Willis played in it.
Yeah.
And but that bandstand was the nicest thing that ever was. We had it had a place underneath to store all the chairs and any instruments you wanted to do, and then it had a top, big top, as big as it was, and you could see the whole band in it. It's not like this thing we got now. You can't see nothing but a trio in it.
Well,
but that band, and of course, right next to it at that time was the original Sufferwell.
Well, I was going to ask you about that because that logo on the Franklin Favorite, I'm thinking you can see a little sulfur well in there.
Well,
Now, how long was that
that
there?
logo is the one I think from over here on this corner.
Okay.
But the
Well,
one
it's
that
got
was
that well, I think.
yeah, but the other one, was where the bandstand was.
Okay. Now, the Rotary Pavilion that we got now at the corner there of Main and Kentucky, there was pavilions on that corner way back
No, there was
long time ago.
That's where the
wasn't
police department was.
it? Well, now I remember that. Yeah, and the Chamber of Commerce was in there for a while.
Yes.
But you or somebody showed me some postcards from like about 1910. And I think I'm getting even before your time here, which is hard to do.
That's before my time, all right.
But I think there was a pavilion there.
Yes, I've got pictures of that.
Yeah.
But anyway, in later times, they tore that down, and they built a real nice building there. It was the city hall.
Right.
And of course, it was a natural place for it to be, because you could sit in that place and view the whole square and keep a tab on it. And it should never have been torn down, but we decided to put that monster up that the Rotary Club built.
Oh, yeah. Well, but it had already been torn down before they didn't tear that down to put the other one up. It had come down. Well, when I was in school, that building you're talking about that the police was in, that'd been torn down. That was just a
but that was a fleeting moment of somebody's idea. It should never have been torn down.
Well, no, I don't disagree with you there.
But it was a good building,
well,
and it was fabulously located.
I remember that building.
Well, I didn't know what you remember it.
I remember it being there.
But it was an excellent building. It was done well, and we had the city judge in there.
Yeah, I remember that.
And he was that, of course, Mr.
McClendon?
Bethel Crow and Miss McClendon too.
Yeah, I called him Fats McClendon.
Yeah, it's Fats. He was the water superintendent, and his wife was an educator. She was the first teacher to grade school.
Yeah.
Grade school down on Main Street.
Well, now your building that was on the north side of the square there.
You mean where
Dunn Brothers? Yeah.
Well, that's old as the hills.
Well,
I've got pictures of it way on back.
I thought they'd probably been there.
It was a grocery store.
A grocery store, okay.
I've got pictures of it when it was a grocery store, and there's bananas hanging out, and there's no street. It's not paved street in front of it.
No, it's just an unpaved street.
Wasn't
there originally an alley along in there somewhere?
The alley was where Dunn Brothers originally was.
Oh, okay. I think there was an alley cut through there. They bring coal in through those alleys, right?
You see what happened? It was an alley that was open, and Mr. Val Donald used to sell oranges and stuff in it.
Hadn't heard that name in a while. Yeah.
And of course Dorothy, his daughter, raised King because I mentioned that, but it's true anyway. Whether she knew it or not. She says, "You don't know what you're talking about." I said, "No, you don't know what you're talking about." But anyway,
well, now, Donald Stretch, that's that same family, right? You go toward Russell, that's part of the road.
No. That's part of the family, but he mainly lived out here next to Food Line.
Do you remember when it was out past Peden's Mill in the mouth of a cave? They had a little platform built and had picnics out there, out on the Johns Loop Road. I think the Rotary Club had out there.
Yes.
Yeah, I guess because it was cooler in that cave mouth in the summertime.
The back originally, they would dip the mill pond, which was right there.
Yeah.
Peden's Mill,
Peden's Mill, right.
And we'd have fish fries. See, my dad taught me how to cook fish.
Yeah.
And not many people know how to cook fish, especially boys.
You gonna tell me how?
Yes, sirree.
All right.
Of course, they had a big kettle.
Yeah.
Like you used to wash clothes in, big round kettle.
I know what you're talking about.
You'd fill it with lard.
Yeah.
Until it got hot.
Yeah.
Dress your fish.
Right.
And drop them in there.
Okay.
And when they floated, they were done.
That's how you knew they were done.
That's how cute.
Floated to the top, and you took them
That's
out.
how cute. The restaurant up here in Bowling Green, half the time we couldn't go in up there because about half the time the fish was raw, because they try to cook them with a timer, and you can't cook fish with a timer because they're not all the same.
That's right. Not everyone's the same.
But the only way to tell is to get the grease the right temperature, and when you throw it in there, when that fish floats, it's ready to take up.
All right.
My father taught me that when they had fish fries out at Peden's Mill.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they caught the fish. They dipped them with a dip net. Of course, it was legal then. You can't do that anymore.
Right.
But you could then.
You didn't have to worry about eating the fish that came out of the creek in those days.
But it was
Clean water,
marvelous,
yeah.
marvelous.
Yeah.
Oh, you could drink out of that
Yeah.
out there. It was so clean.
Yeah.
But anyway, I remember that very well because my father taught me how to cook fish.
Yeah. Now, did you learn the radio TV business in the service, or how did you wind up in that trade?
I took a test when I got out of high school, and of course I didn't have any money. My family didn't have any money. That's not a sin. It's just we didn't have it.
It was. That's right.
And of course I was the last member of the family that had grown up, and the boys had all gone. But I took a civil service test when I got out of high school, and I made so high on it that they were starting mechanic learner schools.
Okay.
And I got into one of those, and I went to Louisville at first, and the mechanic learner was actually preliminary electronics.
Okay.
And because I was so hot out of high school, I could also, I was the only one in the class that could do square root. Because I was fresh out of high school, see, and of course I was valedictorian, and I knew what I was doing.
You haven't. I
don't anymore, but
I couldn't. I don't think I could do square roots either.
But I could.
Now they got the calculator. It don't matter. You know?
Yes, but they didn't have all that.
No,
then.
they didn't. That's right.
I did see a square. What's the rule?
Slide rule.
Slide rule.
Yeah.
But I'd never used one because couldn't afford one.
Right.
I'd do it the long way.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah.
But anyway, then after 3 months in Louisville, there was a step up to a school in Louisville, up on Limestone, and it was a radio school. So I got into it because my grades were good on the other side. And there's several people left here with me, but they didn't make it. But one of the guys who left with me was Junior Ford, and you don't remember the Ford family.
Not really.
But they ran a store about where, that place that sells sporting goods, about along there somewhere.
Okay.
But anyway, he was a natural in dry cleaning.
Okay.
He could go into anybody's dry cleaners anywhere and do it. He's also was a ladies' man.
Okay.
Now you talk about he married a doll. She was, and he could go anywhere in Louisville.
Well, I guess he always dressed nice if he was good dry
Oh,
cleaner.
he'd go in and press his own clothes
There
and be
you go.
ready to go, and he
Yeah,
looked like he
yeah,
was out of a mountain man. But what I was getting around to, he did more to help me. I'd never been out of Franklin.
Yeah.
But we moved into Louisville.
There you were, the country boy in the big city.
That's right.
Yeah.
Out on beyond the racetrack.
Right,
I'd be on the paddock. And he said, Ronald, when I got off the train, he said, you'll never be lost if you remember this is a depot. You can always get back to here.
And there's your North Star.
Well, see, he taught me. And he taught me a lot of practical things.
Yeah.
But he wasn't worth killing. But he was
There's
a ladies.
some folks like that.
But he was a
know?
ladies man.
Yeah.
But I'll be indebtedly gratitude
Yeah.
to Joe Ford.
Yeah. Well, Ron.
And the family was so good to me.
Yeah.
They lived across the street when I lived up on Main Street. And they brought me down to their store and dressed me in the first suit
Oh, is that right?
that
First
I ever
suit
had.
clothes and all that.
That's how much they meant
Yeah.
to me.
Yeah.
But they dressed me. I was fit to kill.
I bet you were.
But anyway, Joe Ford was a great part of my life.
Yeah. How long have you been retired?
Oh, don't ask me.
Well, several years, right?
Oh, yes.
Okay. Well, I'm about out of time, but I'm dying to know the answer to this question.
Okay.
All right. Lots of folks know where you live up on Madison Street.
Right.
Far as I know, it's just you and Elizabeth in the house, right?
That's right.
Why in the world do you raise such a big garden?
Well, I have so many people that ask me for vegetables.
Yeah. I drive by there.
But I feel like that I'm robbing them because they depended on me so long. Now this year I haven't done as well. I got a garden, and it's done real well. The rain has been perfect, but the we've been tremendous.
Now they'll grow fast. Yeah.
But for years and years, I've been raising tomatoes for widows that are shut in,
Oh, okay.
who were raised on a farm.
Uh-huh.
And I also used to take a whole lot to my wholesalers,
Uh-huh.
and they got those. They depended on me too.
Okay.
And so there's a mercy to my madness.
Well, I drive by there and see that big old garden, and
Well, my wife tried to get me to quit this year,
yeah.
and I couldn't work it with a tiller anymore. I had to work it with a little short hole.
Oh my goodness, Ronald.
Of course, this macular degeneration, I
Right.
couldn't tell the weeds from the regular stuff.
And you out there with walking with that cane and out there pulling those weeds up and doing all that gardening.
That's exactly
My
right.
goodness, Ronald.
But I did what I could.
Yeah. Well, good for you.
But I appreciate you asking
Well,
about it.
your next birthday, how old you gonna be?
I'll be 80 years old.
The big 80. All right. Well,
I was born in 1924,
okay, 2004, that'll make 80.
and I'm all that's left of the Dunn family.
Uh-huh.
And Bill was, we were the last of the Dunn families to be together. There was 4 of us boys and 2 girls.
Well, you put that whole family together, and you all have had quite an impact on Franklin.
Well,
You know.
Frank's been awful good to the Dunn
Well,
brothers.
it's a mutual thing, yeah. Well, we've used up all our time, but we'll let the hands on the clock go around a few more times, and maybe we can come back and do it again.
Be glad to anytime. You know that.
All right. Thanks, Ronald.
You're welcome.
My guest today has been Ronald Dunn, who was a popular guest on an earlier program, and he's come back and entertained us again with stories of Franklin from days gone by, and probably haven't scratched the surface yet. So we'll try to have him back. But Ronald, you stay well and keep healthy. All right.
Do the best I can.
All right, folks. Thank you all for watching. Hope you enjoyed the program.